My computer's being kind of glitchy. There we go. Now it's working. Good morning, Andy.
Good morning, Laura. Well, good
How are
afternoon
you
where I
today?
am.
So good to
Morning for
see you.
you.
I'm a little sick today. Actually, I'm healing. I'm healing at the moment.
Is that from,
So
from your holiday? Well, holiday to Disclosure Fest.
something got me on the way home. It's pretty obvious. I don't know what it was, but it got me. So I'm fighting it right now.
I think this is the thing, Laura, as well. I mean, obviously part of this conversation, really, but this is what you find is as you understand like the negative aspect, you start thinking about, looking after yourself in a different way when you do things, especially traveling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is interesting, actually. Jane's son, Lloyd, I mean, he's like 33 or something, 33, 34. But he's just travelled to the US, to New York last week. So as soon as he was in the airport, he was messaging Jane saying, I'm feeling really odd. I've got a really funny head. Can you check me? I think I've picked up something. And he's normally quite good at clearing himself. So even he knows when he's in airports in Heathrow, then obviously there is, a lot of negative things about it, negative people
Oh
and
yeah.
that kind of thing. So, I mean, airports and hospitals are the kind of worst places for people like us to be generally.
Yeah. And it's funny, I got to tell you, I was on the airplane. I was really tired and I was in and out of consciousness there on the plane. And I woke up abruptly and I thought, Earthbound, oh my God, there's an Earthbound on me. I felt it immediately attached. And I was still like half asleep. And I was like, Chen, Chen, Chen. And immediately, like 2 minutes later, I felt lighter and I felt like it was gone. And I was like, I knew. I freaking knew it. I know
Yeah,
I
and
wasn't exaggerating.
I think that's the thing, Laura, as well. That the more you start to understand how you feel and when things don't feel right, you know why you don't feel right. And that's the biggest change, really, from a spiritual perspective, is learning about when you start to actually be sovereign and have sovereignty. You only have to have it for a few days to know how you feel. And then when you don't feel normal, you start to look for something that's attached or some other problem.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we have quite a conversation to have today. I told Andy all about my thing the other day. For those of you who are not aware of my interesting conversation the other day, I was at Disclosure Fest, Stairway to the Stars event in Las Vegas. And one of the speakers that came through, his name was Damien Dumar. Damien was doing a talk on Rh negative blood types and reptilians. And me being Rh negative, I thought, oh, this is interesting. I'll go check it out. And when I walked in, we were about 20 minutes late because we were going out to lunch. And we came into the talk a little bit late. And as we came in, he was talking about vampires and how vampires are based on female reptilians with the fangs and the drinking of the blood and everything. And I was like, whoa, what did I just come into? Like, I was not expecting that to be the topic of discussion. But we ended up sitting through the whole talk, and I found honestly about half of it to be kind of uncomfortable. It was like the energy of the room was just not very good, but we were very curious from him as to where he got his knowledge and if he really was a reptilian. One of the things I was also curious about was the reptilian energy trader that you cleared once during one of your SRT case studies. So I went up to him under the idea of maybe let's see if this guy is bullshit or not. And I don't think he was. I really do not. He claims that he was a reptilian walk-in, that his consciousness, his human consciousness, was replaced by that of a reptilian about 20 years ago, that he has no recollection of any memories before then. And he was talking about Enki and Enlil being two royal white Dracos. And that is what piqued my attention because the Tagetans, who I get a lot of my information from, that I trust very much with theirs as a source, also depicted Enki and Enlil as royal white Dracos. So when I heard that, I thought, holy shit, this guy actually knows his stuff. Where is he getting his info? So we went up and spoke to him, and to be honest, he wasn't bad or evil in my impression. It was just more of like this apathy for humans, where he finds that we are very almost pathetic in his eyes. And that we are just a lower life form that is very ignorant and very childlike. and they have no empathy for the things that we go through and the things that reptilians even have been putting us through for thousands of years. So the reason I asked Andy to join me today is Andy has been dealing with reptilians for decades, haven't you, Andy?
I have, yeah. So it's something that myself and Terry again kind of stumbled over, really. So I obviously didn't really kind of go along with that concept. So I remember when I had my kind of introduction to spirituality and was kind of turned on the spiritual path, one of the first books that I read was a David Icke book, which had the reptilian face on. And I remember reading this book thinking, wow, this guy's kind of wacko, really, because for me, it was a completely new subject, completely new ideas, things that I hadn't really assimilated into my consciousness. And by the time I'd finished the book, I thought, it was a really interesting book, and I kind of whipped through it quickly, but I certainly didn't believe most of what was talked about in that book, really, because it just seemed so crazy from a kind of normal perspective when you haven't been exposed to this type of thing. So that was kind of my initial understanding. And then obviously working for the last sort of 20 years with people, with clients in person, one-to-ones, and then obviously when I engaged with Terry and we started to do SRT, this whole reptilian thing started to come up quite often. So quite a few times we had clients that Chen would talk to, and they were reptilian, and he would engage with them, talk to them in a sensible way. They would obviously be possessing the client in a very negative way, trying to generally encourage the clients to commit suicide, which was why they came to see me as a kind of last place. And obviously hearing voices, intrusive thoughts, that whole thing. Lots of them were taking lots of drugs and things. And of course, as part of my progression, I started to learn about this whole subject and topic, and not just reptilians, but obviously open my awareness to other entity types and other species that are kind of here on Earth, that exist around us in and out of our dimensions. And, this is where obviously Terry and I then started to work on live cases and clients, and we would see and connect to and talk to reptilians quite often. And generally they would be fine, actually. I mean, I know that they'd obviously be negative in that they'd be possessing a client, and they wouldn't have anything particularly good, to do for the client. But when you actually talk to them intellectually, just like you and I talking, just like two people talking, and they're very matter of fact about, someone's done drugs or let them in some sort of hypnotic or hallucinogenic state. So that person's given their free will away. That reptilian entity generally masquerades as something really good, like Jesus or some kind of higher deity. So that person that's, in a kind of drug-induced state and on a high thinks they're talking to something, really quite positive, like Buddha, Jesus, that type of thing. And then the entity asks for their permission to connect to them. And of course they give it because they think they're talking to Jesus. And at that point, they've just given their free will away, effectively. And that then kind of gives the entity carte blanche to start to connect itself into that person's etheric field, and then start to drain their energy in a vampiric way, as you just talked about, really. So that's the first thing that happens when something connects to you. They obviously drain your energy. And then obviously reptilians exist and have a very low vibration. So they need the person they're connected to move into that low vibration. So they use them as a source for energy, basically. And to do that, obviously, they create fear and anger and all of the negative emotions that we tend to see. So from that perspective, it is quite a kind of clear understanding that they don't just come into your space and take you over, because otherwise we'd all be probably reptilian or anything else. But, in different states, especially drug-induced states and things, then obviously, if you, in a subconscious state, give your permission for something to take you over, then of course, that's what's going to happen.
Yep. Well said. So do you think, since you did a scan on Damien, and you did notice he's not sovereign, is he?
No, so that was the first thing. When we talked about it, I obviously just very quickly just scanned his etheric. First thing is I couldn't really see very much, which tends to mean that someone knows what they're doing from a protection perspective. So if I scanned Jono or someone like us, I wouldn't expect to pick up much, because I'd expect them to be quite well protected, because they should be doing that every day. So first thing was I couldn't really pick up a lot from his etheric without delving too deep. And generally we don't do that, because as soon as you start to do that, effectively you're kind of knocking on their front door. And a lot of these entities are very, very psychic, and they're very, very telepathic, and they know that something's coming into their energy field, the same way that you just talked about knowing that you had an earthbound attached to you. You knew you did. So if I basically try and press myself into his energy field to scan him deeper, he would know that immediately. And then, of course, the first thing that comes back from Reptilian is a psychic attack generally. And it generally doesn't stop for quite a few days. So it's not a great thing to do. So I kind of scanned him. I could see that he wasn't sovereign. I picked up on the fact that he probably isn't human. And that was kind of where I stopped, because obviously, you know, like wanting to get into a kind of one-to-one with these types of things, then, and that's what I've learned over the years. I mean, I used to do stupid things with different type of entities, with arachnoids and insectoids and things. And all that happens is when you're asleep in the middle of the night, you get attacked back psychically, and that tends to go on for days because they don't generally give up. And I think, because I listened to your podcast, actually, the conversation around the Damien thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought one of the things that you said that was really interesting was that he said that his friend had actually died because he was quite cocky, and they actually exploded his heart, if you remember. I don't know if you can remember that conversation.
Yeah, he did. It was one of his German friends. He said he developed some kind of a technology that you get into, and it emits high frequency at it, and it clears the earthbounds and attachments.
Yeah, right. So of course
he actually told Damien he could clear Satan himself, was his words.
Yeah, it's probably not the best things to say, is it, really? Because you're kind of inviting, and this is what I've learned over the years, is that, you know, whilst we do clearings and we connect to guides, and we can clear some quite nasty things, you know, you need to keep your ego intact, really, because you don't need to be invited.
Respect.
Attack, and that's the key, because these are entities like us. So whether they're reptilian, arachnoid, insectoid, you know, Draco, whichever species we're talking about, they still have a conscious awareness like we do, and they still exist in some sort of frequency, with or without a body, like we do. So, you know, you need to be respectful that they have a right to be doing the things that they do, because that's, you know, the same way that I always kind of explain it, Laura, the same as us with cows, basically. You know, cows in a field, no idea where it is particularly, not that conscious as an entity probably. Then we come along, we farm them, we put them in milking sheds, we get them pregnant with AI. So, you know, they don't have like sexual intercourse with another cow. They just appear pregnant because they're inseminated with AI, obviously. And then, of course, you know, that we take their milk, which we then take away from them, and then we process that in factories and make milk and bread and cheese and bread, but, you know, milk, cheese, dairy products from their, you know, their substance, if you like. And the cow's got no idea any of those things happen at all. So wouldn't know a bottle of milk came from the cow, and then we ingest it and use that as our substance. So these entities do the same with us. They take our energy effectively. And this is where that energy trading conversation came in with Terry, is that Terry and I were really shocked to have this conversation with that reptilian. And it said, you know, we trade your energy just like you trade animal food, basically, and products. But we can harness your low vibrating negative energy when you're angry, mad, emotional, suicidal. So we can capture that energy, and then we can trade that on an open market in the same way that you go to a supermarket and you buy your food products that come from animals. So to me and Terry, that was like a complete shock, because we never understood it. We didn't understand it at all. It came out of the blue with that conversation with that sort of reptilian trader, and that reptilian entity said that was his job. His job was to go around collecting low vibrating negative energy from humans and trade it on an open kind of stock market type thing, where it's actually very valuable, basically, to other species. So when you start to look at it out of the box, you think, wow, it's like the way we treat animals on this planet is the way that we're treated by these other species, effectively.
It's funny, because I remember during my astral projection 11 years ago, I asked the soul guides whether or not the ETs that come here are benevolent or malevolent, you know, are they good or bad? And they said, well, what do you think humans are? And I remember saying, like, we're a mix of both, you know? And they said that's exactly true for every race on this entire cosmos. Yeah. You get good and bad of both. So it is important to note that we have reptilians that actually do SRT work.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I mean, obviously, you know, Chen's put a team together now. So when I first started to work with Chen, it was just kind of me, Terry, and Chen, really. So Chen was the spirit guide that kind of taught us the practices and worked with Terry, and we kind of learned to develop this technique of spirit release therapy. And then as things started to move and grow, Chen said, you know, I'm going to invite in other entities to work with us because they can do things that he couldn't. So very quickly, he started to kind of grow this team of interdimensional entities, which is obviously what he has now effectively in spirit, which gives him a very big range of things that they can clear and take away from people. And in that group, there is all of these. There are reptilians, there are insectoids, arachnoids, etc. Pleiadians, the Tegatans. There's a mix of everything as part of this huge team that they've kind of put together on the other side. And of course, this is why the SRT that we do is quite successful generally, because effectively it's not just myself and Chen or Jono or anybody else or White Hawk, and there's this big collective team now of interdimensional species that all have different skill sets and can do different things. So when people have sort of alien implants and things in their etheric field, Chen found that quite difficult to clear and remove himself, but obviously he has other species now that can find those implants because they're implanted by that species, and therefore they can take them out. So by elongating the team and bringing in a completely different range of species means there's a whole big range of things that we can clear and remove that we never could back in the 15 years ago or something.
Yeah. So I mean, honestly, do you think that there are going to be more attachments by reptilians or less with things progressing the way they are?
The way I see things is things seem to be getting worse. I'm not really sure why particularly.
Or are we just noticing it more now? That's my question.
It could be that as well. I mean, obviously, I had that conversation with Dolores that was, a little while back. And I asked her, I said, well, when you wrote your protocol then, why did you not look into the entity aspect and clearing negative things? And she said, because there weren't many around. We didn't see many, back in the day. So there must be more here on the planet now. And if you look at mental health, it's exploded. So what's changed, between 15, 20 years ago and now to actually cause those problems? But I mean, there's a lot of things going on with, like the Halon Collider and those sort of things that are opening portals probably left, right and centre. And Chen's
CERN, big portal generators, opening portals to the astral. Yeah.
So,
but honestly,
is that really?
I feel like there's so much that's actually, somebody just said, for example, it's because the universe is shaking everything. With the high frequencies energy that's being, brought here to Earth and the frequencies raising, it is possible that they're just coming out of the areas that they've been in hiding for so long.
Yeah, and I think Chen said to me quite a few years ago now, the light is starting to be shined in the darkest of corners, and therefore we're going to start to see these things. And as a kind of society, we are seeing more paedophiles, the Jeffrey Epstein thing, and lots of things that the elites have been doing behind the scenes are starting to come out into mainstream media, into mainstream awareness. And whether they're leaking that themselves or whether that's being leaked by other people is obviously conjecture, really. But it's there's a lot more. And obviously the COVID thing happened as well, which lots of people
sparked a lot of awakenings despite all the people that left.
Yeah, and of course there was a lot of people in a very depressed state that were lonely, lived on their own. So there was a lot of low vibrating energy around when that happened. And obviously these type of entities, feed on that effectively. So you can imagine it probably became a bit of a feeding frenzy for low vibrating species to be here at that time, because so many people were struggling with,
fear.
Fear, their own health.
Stress.
And obviously loneliness, that type of thing. So, because at the end
you couldn't even visit your dying loved ones in hospital in the UK. It was a big thing. I mean, people literally couldn't even say goodbye to their parents and stuff.
I know, whilst the politicians were dancing, having parties at the same time.
Yeah.
Which is, all this has come out, hasn't it, since, and we all kind of see a very different picture now to the one that we were presented with at the time.
All part of the divine plan, even the negative stuff, I imagine. There's a reason for everything.
Yeah, and I think, going back to the reptilian thing, there are good ones, definitely, as well. Everything is polarized, positively and negatively. So, because I think as part of your conversation with Damien, he said to you, you'll need bigger negative ones to clear and remove the smaller ones or something.
Yeah, he asked me about that. He says, do you think angels are the strongest thing out there? And he had this cocky attitude of, you can't fight a baddie without a bigger baddie. You need a bigger baddie.
Because I listened to that, obviously, and I spoke to Chen at the time, and I said, what's your opinion? And Chen laughed and said, everything is equal and opposite. So if you've got, something very negative in vibration, there'll be something very high in vibration that will be the opposite that can clear it. So there will be positive entities that can remove than the most negative. So what he said wasn't really technically right from that perspective, that if you've got something really bad, the only way you can remove that is by taking something even more negative, because that doesn't work with the laws of, well, any of the universal laws.
I didn't resonate with that, so thank you very much for clearing that up.
Yeah, it was just something I sort of thought I'd just throw it into Chen and see what his opinion. He just laughed and said, well, there's angels, the angelic energy is very high, but there are things that vibrate at a higher frequency than them, as in interdimensional entities that are part of these teams. So
even higher than angels?
That was Chen's opinion, that there is
wow,
other things. They're not the top of the hierarchy, effectively, from that perspective.
Wow.
Of course, that's the way that we kind of understand things, because it makes it. And of course, this is the way that the Bible, I guess, and religion have kind of taught things, that we sort of hear that the angelic realm is the top level before kind of God source or that top energy, but it probably doesn't bring in interdimensional entities at the same time.
Interesting. Well, that's exciting.
Because obviously you were talking about Enlil and Enki as well, which is interesting, because we put that in the course. So that SRT course that John and I wrote, we've actually got those two deities in there as part of the teaching, that that humanity probably came from these type of lineage, or this lineage was part of humanity. So the evolution theory basically doesn't really work from that perspective.
Interesting. Somebody has a question. I want to scroll back up to it. She says, how can you be sovereign and have attached DFEs? I got a report back and was cleared, but had dark spots around my head, sacral, and had 4 DFEs. So she said she was sovereign, but she still had all those attachments. So is it possible? So go ahead.
Well, sovereignty in theory is checking that you don't have anything negative attached. So the two wouldn't really go together in kind of my understanding of it, really. So if I'm checking someone, like I checked Damien, first test, is he sovereign? No, straight away. So it was an immediate no. So therefore, in theory, you wouldn't have DFEs attached to you and be able to pass a sovereignty check. Part of the problem, of course, is that if you have negative things attached to you, so dark force entities, and you try and check your sovereignty, they can be responding rather than your higher self. So this is where we get into this conversation, that they kind of masquerade sometimes as good things, and also potentially you're not hearing back from your higher self, you're hearing back from them instead, which of course is where it takes time to learn the way to quantify what is actually right and what's wrong.
Interesting. So somebody just said, I know 4 people that have been paid to be bound by vampires through Damien and Lucian. So basically this validates what my first impression when I went to their website is that they're actually actively recruiting people to be vessels for entities.
Yeah, and I've worked in the past. I had a particular client that I'd worked with for quite some time, and he was into satanic stuff and that kind of thing. So him and his wife basically kind of had done satanic rituals and were kind of very possessed, would speak in different voices, the whole thing. And they used to be part of a satanic group, basically, that met. And then at one point, they both decided they didn't want to do that anymore because they didn't like it. So I worked on him a couple of times, and he lived quite close to me. So I actually said to him, look, I'll come over to your house, basically, and see if I can clear you both. So I kind of walked into this house, not really knowing what to expect. And obviously, they both sat on the sofa. And, I said to Barry, well, I won't do this. I'll get Chen in. He can take over. He'll basically clear whatever's with you, and then we'll have a cup of tea. So my kind of naive understanding, that's what I was expecting to happen. What actually happened was, as soon as Chen came in, 2 entities came in to him and his wife, basically. So she'd been used in a prostitution ring when she was younger. So she had lots of portals. She was really open. She'd been used by this satanic group in demonic ways. So 2 demonic entities talking to me / Chen through both of them that weren't happy to leave and go. And of course, we'd kind of gone into that layer as well. So it became a very difficult conversation. And in the end, the end result was, we kind of agreed not to remove them because they'd both given their free will to be used by these entities. And they did both done a lot of things, a lot of bad things. And their vibration was so low, Chen was unable basically to kick these things out and remove them. So there is this whole kind of other side of that. And also, I've also had a client I knew before that was into vampirism, and they go to vampire kind of group meetings where they kind of, they suck each other's blood and they do all sorts of stuff, which, at that point, you're allowing entities, or they're inviting entities in to basically take them over and that kind of thing. So there's some real nefarious stuff goes on that you kind of don't ever see in your normal day-to-day. But when you're doing the sorts of things we're doing, you're going to start to walk into a completely different world, basically, because you're seeing anything that's negative kind of comes our way, I guess, to a certain degree. So you start to see people that have been involved with these cults and groups and sects and satanic practices and things, and you start to hear about the things they do, and it's kind of going on behind the scenes, really.
Wow. Somebody just asked an interesting philosophical question. How would one define negative versus positive orientation in a subjective reality?
Well, I guess it's perception, isn't it? Because again, what I would call positive, you may not call positive. So it's a very perceptive thing. And that's one of the things I've kind of learned, again, with clients and people. People say things to you, I haven't done anything negative, or didn't do anything too bad. And then when you hear about the things they did do, you think, well, in my worldview, that's kind of off the scale, bad or negative. But in their view, it's not that bad. So it depends on your upbringing, I guess, and your perceptions of things.
I had to think when you said that. I was thinking about the succubus event, when you had that case study with the succubus, and how, she was invited in and she was like, you like it, I'm here because you like it. Otherwise you could have chased me off long ago, was kind of her attitude.
Yeah. And of course, a lot of these entities actually see us as children. Terry and I heard that so many times when you're talking to them. They say you're just like children playing in a kind of, a pool of sharks, basically, whereby you don't know what's around you. You don't understand what they can do. And, you're just completely naive about, what is going on, really. And, I had that Skinwalker thing. So, Terry contacted Bigelow that owned the Skinwalker Ranch, and we were talking about, or we weren't talking about it. I wasn't even involved in the conversation. Terry was talking to them about us going over there as part of the Netflix documentary to basically scan and see what we thought was in Skinwalker Ranch. So unbeknownst to me, I wasn't a part of any of that conversation at all. But that night, obviously 3 a.m, I got the covers ripped off the bed. This huge energy stood next to me, and I was having a pretty horrific nightmare. And my heart was beating so fast, I thought I was going to die. So when Damien said to you, we can explode your heart, I can definitely say with hand on my heart that had my heartbeat have increased much more, I probably would have passed away in bed. And that was a warning. And the warning was, walk away while you can. And this entity just stood there, and the room was like freezing cold, and I could feel this anger and like hate coming off whatever that was, which probably was reptilian or something. But I was left under no illusion that he could have basically taken my life at that point. And I rang Terry the next morning at 9 o'clock. I said, Terry, we're out. There's no way we're doing anything to do with Skinwalker. That is, whatever's there is pretty bad. It's paid me a visit, and I haven't even agreed to do anything at all. So, we're definitely going to be walking away from that.
Holy shit, Andy.
Yeah, which is, it is kind of part and parcel. I know, like, Jono's had some similar experiences. So the things that you kind of laugh about over time, but when you look back on it, when we talk about Damien and what, what species he is or isn't, and what they can and can't do, this is that whole thing about, we do need to be respectful, because effectively we are kind of in a space that without our own guides and protection around us, we're probably not that protected if we don't understand what we're doing.
No, considering that how well protected you are with your team, and for it to be able to come in and get you when you're in your most vulnerable state, sleeping, is it's a little scary to say the least.
Well, I've had that a lot, basically. So that was probably the worst experience in that I thought, well, I didn't think, I knew that, I thought Jane will wake up and there'll be a corpse lying next to her, and she'll think, oh, he's had a heart attack. Because, of course, you wouldn't know, right? Like, if I didn't wake up and did die that night, Jane would wake up. She wouldn't know that we had a visit overnight from something that was pretty negative, that kind of took you into such a dream state that was so horrific and negative that I was sweating, I was wet with sweat, and just in that really...
Did you ask Chen about what he saw from his side of things when that happened?
I didn't really. I just went back to sleep because
wow,
it happens has happened quite often over the times. It was just a warning, really. And I've spoken to quite a few negative things over the time, about some of the things that we found to clear negativity, that as soon as I put it on the website, we had another warning that information needed to come off pretty quickly. Otherwise, the rest of the family were going to be quite vulnerable to being picked off, basically. So,
well, they don't want us doing these clearings. It's very obvious that this is kind of putting a spanner in their works. So obviously it does kind of leave us as a target to a degree, because they don't want us doing these clearings. I mean, tomorrow, for example, Andy's going to be clearing 200 people during a talk with Chen live. Just think of how many, it's 200 people that aren't going to be feeding entities. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so we're not actually doing like an SRT clearing. This is more like a healing. So Chen's idea basically is to do this kind of group healing thing that, him and his team basically pay a visit to everybody that wants to be part of that. So anyone that doesn't want to be part of it obviously only has to use their intention to think, not me. But anyone that wants to be part of it, Chen and his team will connect to them, clear their chakras, basically perform like a clearing. And I think the idea is to try and open people's heart chakra, because so many people have got a closed heart chakra, which means you can't experience anything positive if your heart chakra is kind of closed. So it's going to be really interesting tomorrow to see how people feel, because as soon as Chen starts talking and obviously his team visit everyone, there's going to be like a hands-on experience that he's explained to me, that they will actually be stood behind people putting their hands on them. And it'll be interesting to see what people actually experience when that happens, because when they put their hands on you, in theory, the heart chakra should be opened immediately, and then they're obviously going to clear the energetics and the chakra system. So it's like a kind of quick clearing session, not in the depth that we do SRT, because obviously there's so many layers of portals, entities, and the whole thing that we talk about. So, but this is going to be like a very kind of top level clearing that's supposed to, I mean, Chen's take from my perspective, he said people should wake up singing in the morning. So that's basically his version of success, is that if everybody wakes up the next day and starts to sing to music, then they've basically made that huge energetic change in everyone at the same time.
Yes, perfect. So, I can tell there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be needing that. And for those of you who have not signed up yet, if you want to see, there are still spaces. Andy made it so there's a lot of spaces available. And I just shared the link. It's the Audience with Chen link that I just shared there. It's £25 to sign up. And yeah, that will be tomorrow. A recording probably wouldn't work the same way that a live one would, so I recommend being there live for the event.
It's really interesting. So obviously from Chen's perspective, it's an experiment, really. He's been talking about it to me now for probably about 3 or 4 years, about this concept of having like 500 people in a room and, having like a demonstration, a chat, and then basically everyone being kind of cleared at the same time in the same space. So that's kind of his kind of goal to get to. And this is like the first part of that, really, to connect with all of these people remotely at the same time with his team, and then basically kind of work through a general clearing for people. So it's going to be quite interesting, because I've got no idea what they plan to do or how they plan to do it, because I'm just the kind of the front person in that we're talking, obviously. But I guess
someone just said we are delighted to be Chen's guinea pigs.
that's a very good explanation of what we will be, really.
Love it. So yeah, tomorrow is going to be a lot of fun, you guys. Make sure you join us. So we've already been chatting 33 minutes, Andy. Shall we have a little chit chat with Chen?
I think it's probably time, isn't it, really? Yep. Okay. So
thanks, Andy.
It's the bit you like. Okay. So I
like all of it, Andy.
Well, my view is obviously different, because obviously I can give you my experience of the things that I do when he's working with me, whereas obviously he's talking to you direct, so it's a different kind of opinion on things. And it's good to have the two things, because some things I don't agree with. That some of the things that he explains to me I don't agree with, and I say I don't know if that's where I am with things, but I know that's your opinion, which is okay. So it's not that we agree on everything, because we don't, and we do bicker quite often, like kind of a married couple, really. So it's being like, for me, it's like having two marriages, really. One to Jane, which is the physical version, obviously, and then I've obviously got Chen that I'm talking to every day, all of the time. Well, not all of the time, but a lot of the time, about other things. So we have some quite bizarre conversations, obviously, about different things. Anyway, okay, so I'll just do a quick meditation and hand you over.
Perfect. I just shared the link for you again, Jackie. There you go.
Good day to you, my dear. It's my pleasure to be able to work with and have this conversation and converse with you again. I've been so looking forward to it.
Nice to see you, Chen. Always a pleasure. We're very happy to have you join us today. Thank you.
Yes, it's getting to be quite a regular thing, isn't it?
It is. It makes my day. It really does. It makes my whole week, actually, to be able to chat with you. So I realize today is going to be a bit of a heavy conversation because, I imagine that you heard all about my conversation with Damien, and we're looking for a little bit more insight as to what he was trying to do at that event, why he would be giving away a free ebook and paying all that money to just be selling something for free.
Yes, it's a very good question. Obviously, from our perspective, we're looking at the vibration and the energy of everything around things that happen to all of you to a certain degree. So the way that you experience things from a personal perspective, being in body, physical human with your conscious awareness, obviously is how you perceive things and you experience things. And then around the outside, you obviously have the subconscious aspects of vibration and all of the other spiritual aspects of what's going on from a different perspective. So when young Andrew spoke to me about the conversation that you'd had with Damien, the first thing we did was to basically look at the energetic stream, and we could see that from that perspective there was a lot of protection in place, and he's obviously very aware of how to look after himself spiritually, which points to either someone being very occult aware, such as Andrew, or obviously other species are able to do this. Other species work from a telepathic perspective, so other entities, of which obviously Reptilian is just one, work from that perspective, that they basically are able to use telepathy to contact and converse with yourselves. And obviously, when you're using telepathy, you can then do something that we call mind control or mind takeover. So they can interject thoughts and ideas into your minds. It's a very simple skill from their perspective. And of course, people that aren't very well protected are then able to be manipulated through their thought process. So if you look at, if you were another entity and you knew you were going to an event as the one that you attended, then effectively you know that you've got like-minded people there. And of course, many of these like-minded people that go to some type of event around disclosure being the concept that you're disclosing the fact that there are other interdimensional entities that exist on your planet and in your space, would mean that those people are going to already be perceptive to alien or other energies. So if you get my drift, all of those people are open to the concept and probably would like to be very, or they would find it very appealing if other entities or alien energies basically showed themselves in the room. They would all clap, they'd all be very happy, they'd be quite positive about having some type of encounter with a different energetic life form. So they're very aligned in that way. So if you're a negative entity and you vibrate in a low vibration, low frequency, it would be the perfect space for you to be, because you can basically stand up in the crowd and say, I'm not human, I am a different life form, masked in a human body. So I have the human bag of bones, if you like, and skin that you see, but inside me, like you have human consciousness, I actually don't have human consciousness. I have a different interdimensional conscious awareness, i.e. I'm a different species. So all of the people at that conference would be very interested to converse. And of course, that way, he would be able to see your energy, your vibration. He would be able to scan you very quickly. So you would probably start to feel quite uncomfortable being in his space, because from a subconscious level, you would be scanned. He would look at your vibration, would work out your level of vibration. From your level of vibration, he'd be able to work out very quickly your assimilated understanding of the area. So do you really understand energy and how to use energy? Do you understand, do you already contact with interdimensional entities and species? Or are you a complete novice to the whole thing? Your chakras are all wide open. If your chakras are wide open, he would be able to basically suck and effectively vampire your energy very quickly. So this is probably one of the main reasons that someone like him would go to that type of place, because effectively, if you look at it from a feeding perspective, it's a perfectly suitable feeding ground. And then if we look at the other aspect, the fact that he was giving away information in the form of a book that people read, when you start...
No, they hear it, they listen to it.
Okay, so it was an
audiobook, yes.
So even worse, really, because of course, if you read something, then you have a filter as you read information. Your subconscious is able to filter the information, and you think, okay, this is something that I agree with, or you feel that the information is not right, it's intangible, and therefore incorrect. So you would discard it. And this is what you all do every day when you're talking to people, when you're reading things on the news. You start to read a few lines, and if the information doesn't resonate with your understanding, you discard it generally. But of course, if you're listening to an audiobook, that filter process isn't quite the same. So other information can be being sent to you audibly that you can't hear. So if you're using audio or visual, of course, the same with the television. The television can send you pictures that you don't see consciously, because with the television, obviously, it's running at a high frequency of hertz, 50 or 60 hertz, meaning 50 or 60 pictures a second. So you don't see 50 or 60 pictures, you see a moving frame, a moving video. But interlaced in those 60 pictures could be a picture saying jump off a bridge, or buy something, or sell something, or give your energy away. And your conscious mind
subliminal messages.
Yes, your conscious mind won't see that imagery, but your subconscious will. It will affect your subconscious, and it will change your emotional state. And what you'll probably find is, if you actually deconstructed the audio that he was providing, there's probably hidden audio of frequencies that you don't hear outside of your bandwidth that have been interlaced into that audio to probably encourage you to join the group or the organization that he is part of. And this, obviously, if he's reptilian, he'll be existing in that lower frequency. So he'll be encouraging people to join an organization whereby you give your free will away, and then effectively that species can harness your energy.
Wow. And this isn't just with reptilians at events. This could happen in a Coca-Cola commercial, couldn't it?
Of course. And this is what, the media have been using these things for a long, long time. If you look back in time, the CIA and some of these other organizations have been working through how the psychology of a human being works and what you see and what you do. So they've been using techniques for decades now in terms of how to manipulate people to get them to do the things that they want them to do. And of course, the television is the best way. So if you look at horror films, I know we've discussed horror films before, but horror films are designed to put you in a low vibrating, fearful state, basically. And when you enter that fearful, low vibrating emotional state, then your vibration goes right down, and therefore you will attract negativity into you'll manifest negativity into your space. So entities may find you, and they may suck or harness some of your energy in a vampiric way, or you might just find that you leave the room that you're in, the cinema, or if it's your home, in that low vibrating state, and then you're going to attract low vibrating events into your life. You'll find that things go wrong for you because you're vibrating at a low state of affairs. Because of course, we all know that the human being is a manifestor. You manifest what you think about. So whatever vibration you think about with your mind, you send thoughts out into the universe, and you attract that level of vibration. So if you're in a low vibrating, fearful state because you've been watching a horror film, that's what you're sending out around you, and therefore you will attract some type of negative chaos into your life. Whereas if you went to, if let's say you went to a concert and you were listening to high vibrating string instruments and instruments that have a very high level of sound, very positive energy, you'll be tapping your feet, and you'll come out of that concert with very high vibration. And then, of course, when you're thinking about things with a high vibrating energy. You'll manifest more positive things into your life. And this, of course, is why the media is as it is, because it's designed to take you into a completely low vibrating state so that you don't manifest positivity into your life. And it's been like this, of course, for a long, long time.
Yes. Wow, that makes a lot of sense. I wanted to ask you about a couple things that I noticed on his website, if that's okay, to get a better idea of things. One of the things that he says he works with, he mentions Lilith. on his website. And I'm curious about Lilith because of her history mentioned in the Bible. We haven't gotten much. And what is her association with reptilians and demons? And was she a real person?
So Lilith, again, is a construct, effectively. So if you look at some of these names, they're energetic constructs. So when you talk about, if you talk about God, you don't talk about a single person that sits in the clouds that's God. You talk about an energy, effectively, which from our perspective is benign. It's neither positive or negative. It's what we call as the God source energy. So if we talk about these different types of entities like Lilith, Lilith effectively is an energy, and it has been in the past an entity as well. So the Lilith energy, there can be multiple versions of the Lilith energy around. So if you were into demonology, let's say, and you wanted to manifest the Lilith energy, you could basically go into some type of ritual. You could call up from the low vibrating negative space an entity that vibrates with the Lilith energy, and therefore a demonic entity would actually manifest physically for you in front of your eyes in a protected pentagram, let's say, if you're doing things in that way, that you can converse with from that level of vibration. But it isn't really one person in the way that you understand things. It's a collection of energy that we would term as Lilith energy. Does that make sense to you, my dear?
It does. It does make sense. Wow. Okay.
And
so
you wouldn't really want to do that if you were conscious.
Well, she's associated with vampires, and I'm curious as to why. I mean, reptilians would be talking about vampires so much. Are vampires real, or are they referring to a reptilian?
Well, there have been vampires, of course, that have existed on the planet. Because again, if you look from an energetic perspective, all of these entities like reptilians are vampiric in the way that they work, because they effectively steal your energy. So they're pulling energy from you continually. So if you look at some people that have some of your, what we call energetic diseases, so things like multiple sclerosis, some of those things whereby the energy is effectively being sucked out of the person to the point that they're unable to do anything really, to walk, to exist. The mental state is compromised. For some of those people, not for all, of course, but for some of those people, they've probably got an entity connected that is acting in a vampiric way and sucking their energy. So we're back to this trading of energy on this interdimensional platform that you talked about at the start with Andrew.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. And it explains why they're actively recruiting people to be vessels for these entities.
Yes,
or to be food.
Yes, because of course there's two things they can do. To start with, obviously, you have, if you imagine you have an interdimensional entity in a different vibration that you can't see as a human being, but it could be stood right next to you, just it's not in your space, you can't see it effectively. So that entity is looking to exist, so it needs to assimilate low vibrating energy. So if you're in a fearful state and it can connect to you, it can assimilate some of that energy, so that's its substance. The same way that you open your fridge and drink milk. So you drink milk from a cow, which was created by another being, if you like, on the planet, and that gives you substance. But of course, on the other side of the coin, if an entity can absorb itself into the conscious intelligence of a human, so if it can possess you completely, it doesn't just walk in and take over your body, but effectively it connects into the energy form of the human. So you still have a spirit inside that is human. The physical body is still the physical body you see with your eyes, but now you have an interdimensional entity connected continually to that vehicle, if you like, and that entity then can basically start to use telepathy to make that person do things. So if you look at lots of the shootings that happen around the world, quite often these are entity-based manipulation rather than the actual human person killing someone. They have something connected to them that's putting the thoughts in their mind and telling them that bad things will happen if they don't do what the entity wants them to do. And of course, it's been happening from, if you like, the first incarnation of a human being. So this has happened all through, your lifetimes, effectively.
Wow.
It's just that now you're starting to understand it. If you look back to cavemen wouldn't have understood, if you went with the concept of cavemen, because of course it's not my understanding at all of evolution, because this concept that you evolved from monkeys, I mean, always
we all know that's nonsense, Chen.
Of course there wouldn't be any monkeys left, would there, if you all evolved?
No, exactly.
So obviously that concept is completely wrong. So we go along that concept, but every generation hasn't really understood the concept of entities in the way that your generations do now, because at this time the veil is thinning, the vibration on the planet is rising, and as I've said before, you will start to see, people are already seeing interdimensional entities walking around. So you're going, that gap between what was physical and what was etheric or ethereal is actually eroding to the point that many people, especially mediums and psychics, are seeing into that gap, so they can see people in front of them that someone else can't see physically, but the energy is there, and the medium or psychic can see and talk to that person. And the same way that young Andrew can talk to reptilian entities. So someone else can't see them. He may not see them with his eyes, but he knows that he can converse and speak with them, because of course you're just changing your vibration to be able to match theirs, and you're using telepathy to talk to a different species, which of course is very simple, because you're all designed to be able to use telepathy. It's just that it gets turned off as part of your schooling system.
Yes. Can I ask, when you, for example, have been possessed by an entity and you do something terrible, how does that affect your karma? If you weren't the one that was actually, in your sovereignty when this occurred, does it affect you karmically? Are you still going to have to make amends for the people that you harmed while you're under the influence of this entity?
Yes, it's a very good question, my dear. So the simple answer is yes, it does affect your karma, because you're still the physical incarnation that did the deed, if you like. So when you have an entity that's effectively connected to your etheric and overshadows the human spirit is still animating the physical. So the human spirit is still the thing, is still the part of you that eats, that drinks, that animates that physical body. So if that human person takes a gun and kills someone, the human spirit that was actually incarnated into the body, from birth, is still in control. They're just basically being manipulated by this overshadowed entity, whether it be reptilian or something else. So it's the human spirit that picks up the karmic debt effectively from that particular event.
Well, I don't like that answer, Chen.
No, it's unfortunate, of course.
I appreciate the truth, but I don't like it.
Well, of course, and this
Not
is
fair.
And this, of course, is why we're here, to try to explain some of these spiritual understandings to people, because, of course, it changes the way that you think and it changes the way that you do things. And it also makes you more aware of the way that you live your life and the things that you do and the people that you mix with generally.
Wow. What about generational curses that lead to these entity attachments? Is this old karma, familial karma that we're dealing with?
Well, those things, again, can be cleared and removed. But again, generally, if you look at the human species hasn't really been without some type of entity control from its evolvement, really. So there have always been entities that have been connected to humans, and those entities, generally more negative than positive, if they're not spirit guides or soul guides, have had that as their main driving force. So if you look at people that that align themselves with positive things and positive ideas and meditate and connect to their spirit guides and try to live a positive life, obviously they're not being manipulated in a negative way, and they won't be. But people that enter into negative choices, whether that be joining, if you join a group of people, so there's obviously lots of fraternities and organizations around the world that we all know the names of, that are basically seen to be negative in one way or another, and people join them because they think that they can progress their career, or they can receive abundance because they'll get work and jobs and things like that. By joining these organizations, of course, you give away your free will to a certain degree, because you're now being controlled by an organization that has an agenda, and that agenda generally is some type of control of you. So you agree to join, but you give away your personal control to that organization or company, and then of course you're doing what they tell you to do. So effectively it's a harmonious agreement both sides. But of course, if that organization is being run by or connected to negative entities behind the scenes, which they generally are, then of course you've now joined something that's very negative in vibration, and of course you're maybe unbeknownst to you realizing that you're now part of this this organization or group of people, and therefore what happens to one happens to everyone collectively. Because of course this is the other problem, is that if you join 3 people and 2 of them are mass murderers, and you're friends with them and you have the same ideas and you do the same sorts of things, if one of them kills somebody, as a group,
you're guilty by association.
Yes, of course, because your vibration's connected to theirs, so you have to be from a spiritual perspective.
So is it technically a shared karma then? Like they're going to have to answer for forcing people to do things when they eventually cross over? Or is it just completely shirked all that karma from forcing you to hurt people?
Yes, basically they've shirked it effectively. So the karma isn't really divided. And of course, this is why if you look at, again, the way that countries are run and your politics and things are run, people have to choose to do the things of their own free will. So this is why politicians don't do things. This is why people that run countries go to war with another country. They don't send their family and children. They send somebody else's family and children. Because, of course, it's that family and children that pick up all of the karmic debts and the negative aspects of going to war and doing negative things. The people that run everything, you don't see them, because of course in the old days, my dear, they used to be on the horse, didn't they, at the front with the sword out, and they'd say charge, and of course everyone would follow behind because the person leading you was out front. But it doesn't happen anymore. The people that are leading the charge now are sat in their nice office, drinking a nice glass of whiskey, whilst the troops are basically engaging in negative aspects of war and creating and doing terrible things to other people. So of course it's them that assume the karmic debts and problems, not the people that are actually orchestrating the events in the first place.
Wow, that's all I have to say to that. Wow. It answers so many questions as to why the world is the way it is. This is a big piece of the puzzle here.
I think that's the thing, my dear, isn't it? Is that when you actually understand the concepts of what's happening in your life, if you can understand your life and the choices you make and the reason you're in the situations you're in, then if you extrapolate that out into the greater place that you live, so the community that you live in, if you're living in the middle of a city in a very maybe quite a desolate and poor place, everything's falling apart, nothing's being maintained, the people that are attracted into that space are generally impoverished, not by their own choice generally, but they come from impoverished families because they've been controlled. So the whole vibration is low and negative. And then of course you have criminality happening because those people are unable to feed themselves and look after themselves. So they have to go out and take from other people that have more abundance. So effectively, the place that they come back to and live is always going to stay very negative. But, if you can imagine, if you brought in lots of wealth and you changed the vibration of the place and you built some lovely, beautiful houses and the people started to share some of the abundance, the vibration and the energy of the place would change, which would attract more positivity, and people could then move out of poverty. But if you look at poverty across the world, it's always kept in the same places because it's by design.
Yes. Absolutely. There's so much that I wish that we could do to shift these things. Is there anything we could do on a personal level to try and help the people that are kind of falling into these traps?
Yes, because there's 2 ways to look at things, of course, as always, with everything. So first of all, it's personal responsibility. So your personal responsibility is to each of you. You're responsible for yourself. You're responsible for your own thought process, and everything you manifest is from your thoughts. So first thing you have to do is change your thought process for you personally. So you have to have boundaries to start with that people don't cross. When people try to cross your boundary, you need to sound them out and say, no, I don't agree with what you say or what you do. I have a boundary. You're crossing the boundary, therefore I need to push you back to the other side. Done with love, of course. So starting with yourself and your family is the first place, because that changes your vibration and it starts to mean that you move into a more positive vibration because you're being in service to self, and you're then starting to work with your own morals and integrity. Because if you don't have any integrity and any morals, then of course you can't change anything. So you have to start with you as a person. And then when your morals start to change and your integrity and your vibration start to change, and you start to speak your truth, what you believe, because of course all of you have different ideas and perceptions, and what's right for one is completely wrong for someone else. But all you can do is speak with your own truth in that way. So when you start to work from that perspective, then of course you start to find people vibrating at your frequency. And of course, these days it's marvelous because you have the internet. So you can find, as you have, my dear, a group of people that have the same vibration and energy as yours. Therefore, the messaging that you send out is your level of vibration. And if they join your group and their vibration is lower, they will either leave because they won't like the messaging, or they will start to come online with your messaging and think, yes, I agree. And this is what I like to do. I feel better when I hear these things in these podcasts. And then, of course, you start to grow the energy in that way, and you grow the people and you grow the vibration. And then as that starts to swell, you then get to the point that you get bigger numbers, and now you can start to make changes. So people can start to change their own local areas or societies. Because, of course, this is where politics goes wrong, really, I'm afraid, is that you have politicians generally these days that are not elected by the people anymore. They're elected by corrupt people that put them in positions of power, and they're put in positions of power because they're controlled in one way or another. So you as a general population are not really involved in the political process anymore, even though you may be told that you are, and they may pretend that you're part of the process. Everything's being decided behind the scenes by political elites, and obviously corporations are taking over the world because, of course, they're controlling resources. So you have corporations that have control of all of the wealth and the resources. So the whole thing is being stacked against any type of free will, and people are losing control of their lives. But what you do have, and no one can take it away at all, you have your own mind, and you can manifest with your thought. So put the right people in a room together that have positive thoughts, positive ideas, can start manifesting change. That changes everything. And that's what's starting to happen now. If you look at the world, it's being polarized. You have people that are trying to lead and take you into a negative place, those that control most of the countries and those that run the political structures and the big corporations. And then you have the rest of the people, of which the numbers are infinitesimally bigger, that actually need to get control of their own mind and thoughts. And you can start to build your own version of your own community online that you wish to live in. And that will start to manifest in the physical because you're starting to think about it from a vibrational perspective, if that makes sense.
Yes, we can feel it happening, we can see it happening. It's wonderful how everybody's coming together. There's no higher calling to being a rebel leader, in my opinion.
Well, it's what you'll hear, my dear, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely.
But of course, on the other side of the coin, you have to be careful that you keep your head underneath the parapet, because as soon as it arrives on top of the parapet, then of course you can obviously be targeted. And this is where you have to be quite clever about how you work and how you organize yourselves, because of course, what you're working against organizations and companies and people that have infinitesimal amounts of money and wealth. But of course, that's not energy. What you have is an infinitesimal amount of energy that you can change and move and orchestrate new vibration with. But you need to do that subjectively and obviously from the background.
Yes. I don't want to get snacked on again like I did at Disclosure Fest. I could feel that the reptilian fed off of me. I was in very low spirits for 2 hours after that.
Yes, and that's good, my dear, isn't it? Because it's real. It means you actually felt something that was real. So whilst you were talking to him, he would have seen that you were probably on quite a high. You're enjoying yourself at a festival. You're probably not that well connected. And then, of course, he wouldn't have been consciously thinking, I'm going to assimilate your energy. It's just what they do. The same as you milk cows. It's just what you do. So he would have been sucking your energy like a magnet, two magnets together, basically North and South Pole. They pull together when they're polarized in that way. So he would have just been assimilating your energy without even thinking about what's happening. But when you left, my dear, he would have felt very, very happy and good, because of course he would have assimilated your vibration, which of course is quite high. You, of course, on the other hand, walk away feeling quite low, negative, and probably self-doubting yourself about some of your understandings and intentions, most possibly.
Yes. Yep. Nailed it. Yep. Exactly. I felt like I was about an inch tall walking away from that table.
Yes, because of course that was the amount of energy that was probably removed from you. So energetically, you probably were an inch tall, which is probably why you felt so negative, down, and maybe negative emotional as well.
Well, as one final question, I wanted to ask you, we were actually doing a sound healing yesterday on our live, and our friend who was doing the sound healing actually felt a psychic attack during the event from one of the attachments that one of our followers had. So my final question is, what can we do in order to not get snacked on? Well, how can we protect ourselves?
Yeah, so this is, of course, the whole point of the conversation to a certain degree. Everyone has the ability to protect themselves with their thought and intention. So again, you don't have to follow some huge big process or do some big meditation every day. All you need to do is see yourself in a protected space in any way that you visualize that with your intention. So this is the whole point of meditations, where you see yourself in a bubble of light and then you open a door, walk in and close the bubble. The concept being that you had a space that is the bubble, if you like. You walk energetically into that space because that's how you humans think. You then close a door behind you, which means you've sealed yourself in that space. So just having that thought that takes seconds means that your vibration changes. You lock yourself into a protected energy bubble that you've created. So this is the whole point, my dear. You've manifested something with your thoughts. So you could spend an hour doing a meditation, or you could just think to yourself, I'm protected. And if you just visualize something, and this is the whole point that Andrew came up with, this concept of this wetsuit, if you remember from the meditation groups, that you climb into a wetsuit, you do the zip up to your throat, you throw the hood over your head. That protects your chakra system. So your chakras can still be open, energy is still flowing through your body and your etheric body, but you're now in a protected space. And then this concept of having like an invisibility cloak that you manifest in your mind, that you climb into the armholes and you flick around you, and then you flick the hood up over your head so it drapes down past your eyes, almost like the Merlin character of archetypal old. So now you're basically visualizing yourself in a very protected cloak of invisibility, which changes your vibration and makes you invisible to negative things. So now, of course, you're effectively double protected. Your chakra system is protected by the energetic concept of the wetsuit. And if you're using the invisibility cloak idea, you're now basically cloaking your whole vibration from anything negative, which means, of course, you can walk into their space unseen. So the game changes quite drastically. And this is how occult practitioners, if you wanted if you wanted to go to war, let's say, with the darker side from a spiritual perspective, which of course I don't advise you do, but if you did want to do that, theoretically, you could put yourself inside that invisibility cloak and then walk into their space whereby you're unseen to them, and then you can start to cause problems for them if you wanted to do that, which of course people like young Andrew have tried to do, and then obviously learned that it's not the best idea, because you're obviously opening yourself up to quite severe attacks when you're found, or when they find your vibration, because everything is energy. So if you walk into a building, you sat in front of Damien, so your energy signature is right in front of him. So from an interdimensional species perspective, he can read your number. So if you work on the concept, you've got a 16-digit number that is your personal vibration. Wherever you go on the planet, and off planet, of course, that's your number, that's your vibration. So if he wanted to find you, all he'd have to do is basically look for that vibratory frequency, and he would be able to find where you are. And this is why, of course, lots of mediums find when they walk around cities, discarnate spirits, earthbounds that are dead, that are roaming around the graveyards and places, follow them back, because of course they can hook into your energetic signature, so they can follow you home. And this, of course, is what young Andrew used to find when he was quite naive. He would go marching around places thinking that he was quite clever doing things, some things that he shouldn't have been doing, to be honest. And then, of course, 2 or 3 hours later, lots of these discarnate spirits, these earthbounds, would actually come marching into the room. And then he'd have problems, because he'd now have a group of discarnate spirits and earthbound, some of which might have nefarious intentions towards him in his space, because they followed his signature back. So again, if you think about everything as a vibration energy, all of you have your own unique signature, and that's how you can be tracked, traced, and found. In the same way that the physical system, you have your passports, and your passports is a number that relates to you. And when you travel from country to country, you scan your passport, and therefore the the organizations know which country you pass to and from. You have a vibration frequency, which is you, and that can be tracked and traced by other interdimensional energies.
Wow. It all resonates, Chen. Thank you so much for that explanation. It's very helpful for us with moving forward and not wanting to be left vulnerable. So thank you. That is hugely insightful. Andy wanted to keep things today to about 30 minutes because he's got some time constraints. So I just want to say thank you very much for joining us today, Chen. It was an absolute pleasure. And I look forward to having our chat tomorrow to be hosting the event. Thank you for including me. Deeply grateful.
Yes, well, thank you, my dear. I've enjoyed the conversation. Hopefully people have learned something different and something new, and just a different way to think about things. Really, that's all that can be asked, is that we present information and you must assimilate that information with your understanding and then elect to either align yourself with the information or not. Of course, it's your personal choice. But for tomorrow, we're going to be I'm super excited because we've been working on this for quite some time now, this concept of actually providing group healing. And this, as Andrew said earlier, of course, is the first stage of that, whereby my team and I will connect to everyone that puts the intention forward to receive some type of healing. And we're going to work through primarily opening the heart chakra is the first thing, because most people's heart chakras are either partly closed or completely closed, which means that you can't manifest and feel love. Your emotional system is completely compromised. So this is the first place that we will start. And then we'll basically work through a light energetic clearing. It's such that you should wake up the next day feeling much more positive about yourself, and obviously in a different vibration, which of course is the key from our perspective. And then I know Andrew said before, but of course the plan from my perspective is that we basically propagate this out to the concept of being able to create rooms or with huge groups of people that we can work through a lot more complex clearing. And this obviously is where we're expecting to take things from an SRT perspective. We're looking to get to a point that we have SRT practitioners like Andrew and Jono that can stand in a room, can connect with us, and we can then orchestrate a proper group healing in person, both interdimensionally from an etheric perspective and also on the physical body. It's a bit like the old days when you used to see people that walked in a room and they maybe limped in, or they found themselves going in on a wheelchair, and then of course they ran out smiling and laughing. This is the general intention, because again, everything is energy. So if we can change energy, we can manifest change and physical healing in people. And of course, there's lots of other conversations that we could have about obviously nutrition and the human body and those sorts of things. But all of that's to come, hopefully.
Yes, I'm hoping this is going to be the first of many.
Yes, and of course, from our perspective, we're also looking forward to this in-person course with the first batch of people that we're going to be connecting with and working with, because again, Andrew and Terence obviously came up with this protocol. Things have moved on and changed since then. Terence is obviously now in spirit. He's connecting, as you know, to Dolores and Lao Su and some other quite powerful energies behind the scenes. So unbeknownst to Andrew and Jono, we're looking to change things quite significantly, but as yet we've kept them in the dark as to what those changes are likely to be. So it's going to be quite an interesting session.
How exciting. I love it.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
You will be here, my dear, so we will get to meet in person.
I'm looking forward to my big Chen hug. Thank you very much, Chen. We love you very much. Deeply grateful.
I will say good day to you all. It's been my pleasure, and I will pass you back to young Andrew.
See you tomorrow, Chen. Morning, sunshine. How are you?
I'm all right, I think. Yeah, all good.
I love when you snap back in, you're cross-eyed when you open your eyes.
You know, everything's blurry for about the first 10 seconds, and then it kind of all, kind of comes back. Basically.
Wow. Well, we have 303 people watching, Andy. That is a new record.
Wow, was it interesting enough to be good?
I mean, it always is. It always is. You know, he is a fascinating person, and it was a really big treat in order to hear from him today. And I'm sure you're going to learn some stuff as well when you rewatch it.
Of course, that's the funniest thing, Laura. So I actually have to rewatch it to see what he says.
Well,
funny.
it would be nice if we could nap as quickly as you do, Andy. Just bam, and I'm out. You know what I mean? Like taking a little power nap.
Well, I've taken like 20 years of practice, to be fair. It used to be about an hour in and an hour out. So, going back in time, Jane used to be sat on the sofa and I'd be effectively letting Chen in, but that would take like an hour. So she'd be watching telly, drinking tea, and she'd be sat there watching me, whatever I was doing. Whereas obviously now it's kind of instantaneous, just in and out, really. Which is why I saw that video that you put on of the Disclosure Fest of that other group when they were kind of doing some funny old movements and things. And, it kind of, I thought it was quite amusing to watch, to be honest, because obviously that isn't my understanding of how Chen comes in and out, basically.
I don't think they were being authentic, Andy, to be fair. No, some just... I when Chen comes through, I can feel it, like I can feel somebody who's really channeling versus somebody who's faking. Whether or not they're on camera, whether or not they're in person, I can feel it both times. So it's, it's easy, in my opinion anyway, to tell a real person who's channeling from a fake.
Yeah, right. Because that was my take. When I saw that video that you put on, I looked at it and kind of laughed. I thought it looked kind of like theatre to me, really. But I mean... we're all doing things in a different way. Unless you're actually sat in front of those people, you can't really get the feeling as to, is this authentic or not, really?
Well, I don't know, because I mean, even when White Hawk came through with Jono, I could feel chills. You know what I mean? And when Chen comes through, I can always feel like almost like electricity in the atmosphere. Like it's hard to explain, but you feel kind of electrified while you're talking with him or while you're hearing him talk.
Yeah, I think that's what will be interesting tomorrow with this whole kind of healing session, is that he's actually going to potentially kind of touch everybody. So it's going to be really interesting to see what the feedback is afterwards as to how people perceive, did something happen or didn't happen at all, or do they feel better? Do they wake up and start laughing uncontrollably, which obviously would be nice.
Well, I'll start a thread tomorrow after the event in the SRT group, and we'll get people to throw in their 2 cents and what they experience, because that'll be fun to read everybody's,
Yeah, I think that's, and of course, it's what makes it real. From my perspective, I don't know what's going to happen and how things are going to happen, so I'm kind of like a kind of viewer of this as well as everyone else to a certain degree. So it'd be quite interesting for me to see what people do or don't feel. And it's one of the things I've always tried to do from my perspective is to be real and authentic, as in, this is what we do, take it or leave it, see how you feel. But it's everyone's kind of interpretation as to what's happening, isn't it, and what we're doing. So
somebody just asked if it would be effective during the recording. So if they were asleep, for example, because they're in Australia and it's 3 a.m. when we're doing the event, would they be able to watch it the next day and maybe have Chen check in while they're watching it? Or do you think it'll only happen live?
No, I think Chen's perspective is that whoever watches it, that is part of it, that's given their intention to be included, will be. So when they watch it, they'll get the same experience as those that... Because there's no time and space, is there, effectively? So even though we're doing it live to us, the person that watches it a day or 2 days later, it's still live to them at that point. So, this whole time space thing doesn't really count, if you like.
Wonderful. Somebody's asking about your dogs in the background. Do you mind explaining?
Dog? Oh, you can explain if you like. I'll get one. These are my kind of food dogs, basically.
Somebody asked if they're reptilians. No, they're not.
They're good ones if they are. They behave really well, which is nice.
They're beautiful.
And they don't leave a mess. They don't shit on the floor or anything. It's great.
Love it. Well, this has been probably one of the most exciting conversations I've had in a while. I mean, this is intense. I'm a little annoyed, though. I must say I didn't like one of Chen's answers.
That's good. That's good, because you don't need to agree with everything, obviously.
Well, it's not I agree with him. I believe him. It's not that I don't believe him. It's that I don't like it.
That's difficult.
Because one of my questions was whether or not they can shirk karma. If the entities that are making people do things, like commit mass murder and stuff, on whether or not the entities have karma too, or if it's just the person whose vehicle was being used. And he said, no, it's basically just the person whose vehicle is being used. They get to shirk the karma completely.
Yeah, which is quite clever, isn't it? From an entity perspective, that you can kind of... It's a bit like a puppet, isn't it? You can put your hand inside a puppet and make it look to do things, but, the puppet isn't doing it. You are. But, effectively, if people saw the puppet, they would assume that that's what's happening. Which is,
not cool.
Not cool, but...
the universe needs work.
Well, I guess we can change everything, can't we? This is the whole thing, really, is that, we as a kind of collective can start to think differently and make different things happen if we choose to.
That is another thing he said, yes, that we are going to change the world, quite literally.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think that's that's kind of my take, is that when I started to do this type of thing one-on-one, one person at a time, and quite a few of my friends used to laugh and say, what is the point, really? You're only changing a few people. Is there any point in doing that at all? You could be playing football or fishing or doing whatever hobbies you want. And I sometimes used to think the same. I used to think, it's an hour of time per person, and hopefully they go home feeling better than they came, which is good, of course. But that's kind of manifested now into a completely different space, whereby we are looking at this whole interdimensional healing in one go with multiple groups of people all over the world. So we are now at the point that we can start to do this type of thing that we're going to obviously try tomorrow, basically.
Well, I think we might have pushed 200 people finally. We've got a lot of people saying they're signing up in the comments. So the more the merrier, guys.
Well, I think I said to you last time, one of the last times Chen and I did a chat, there were like 13 people, and we thought that was really good. Because Chen was actually happy. He said, we got 13 people, fantastic. They're going to listen to my message. So we're obviously connected and talking to you. Obviously, the game's changed, obviously, massively. So we're into, quite big numbers. And of course, Jane used to host these. So when she saw the numbers coming in, she said, I've got stage fright. I can't talk to all these people. I was like, I need to get Lara to do this. So I said, okay, I'll message Lara and see if she's free, because it is Saturday. So we kind of did we did acknowledge the fact that, it's people's weekends and stuff like that. So, but yeah, she started.
I'm very glad to hear that even people in Australia who won't be able to make it live will be able to benefit from it. So that's actually, I should even make another post and mention that, just so they know, because there's a lot of people who wanted to sign up and couldn't, because they were worried about the time constraints. So I don't know, maybe next time we'll do one a different time zone, so that way they can, get in there. Because there's a lot of people who are in Australia. About a third of my followers are down under.
It's quite good, wouldn't it? Like when you come over and we do this SRT thing, we can have a talk about maybe doing like a group, like a monthly group healing session with the group of people that want to join. Online effectively, without payment and stuff. We can just, like we would do like a mass meditation, because obviously meditation is thought, so we're going to manifest different energy and raise the vibration. We could start to do like a group healing session across the world with all of the people that want to join, assuming that we can get that to work. It's quite a big ask, I know, but it's just a thought.
If it's meant to be, it will. We'll make it work. I just shared the link again for you guys. I think, there it is. So if any of you have questions, feel free to hit me up with a message. But we'll see the rest of you guys tomorrow at should be 1 o'clock EST, 6 o'clock your time, right?
6 p.m. our time, yeah. So London, UK time. I always put London, UK time, because I'm aware that there's a London in America. So before, I've had a few meditations that people didn't join, and I was kind of sat there thinking, well, where is everybody? And then, of course, I got a message to say everyone was online in London, US time, not UK time, which was quite funny, because I think I went to bed, and then, of course, everyone's joining this Zoom session that I wasn't on because I was asleep. So we now say London, UK time. I
mean, honestly, we've got people from all over the world on here. So we're going to need SRT practitioners all over the world that can do this kind of work,
Yeah, I think that's the point. That's the whole point of having this SRT group. This is what Spirit Release Therapy and Spirit Release Academy was all about when John and I connected, is creating somewhere that we all can join from all over the world. The same people doing the same things, just we do it as a collective, and therefore the energy is obviously massively magnified. And there's lots of, because there's so many people that need help that as individual people, we can't obviously, accommodate that. But as the only way to do it is to create groups, isn't it, with the same conscious awareness. And then we do things together as groups and make the groups bigger. So it kind of is simple, or should be simple, which is what you're doing with the divinate thing. I mean, that divinate thing is like a fantastic idea, really.
Because trying to unite everybody.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? It's trying to create one place where everything's in one place, because there's one of the big problems I think with spirituality really is there's so many fantastic people all over the world, but they're just working on their own. There's tiny little islands doing their own thing, their own practice or their own therapy. And even when I started to do psychic surgery, you can't connect to other psychic surgeons because nobody wants to really connect to you. Everyone's doing their own thing again. So there's no concept of actually joining together energetically and making things bigger, which is effectively what we kind of need to do. So having a hub that kind of is that place, which is your divinate, is fantastic.
Yes, we are working on developing roadmaps as well for people. So, like, for example, you show up on the website, you need healing, here's your healers. If you need training, here's your trainees. Here's your, all the things that you need are in easy access. And then they can train themselves and then end up being a healer too. So to bring it through from the start to finish.
Because that's exactly it, Laura. If you look at all of us, we've all been through shit stuff to get to where we are and what we do today. So I don't know anyone that is doing any of this stuff like ourselves that's had a great ride. Most of us had a pretty traumatic ride to get to being able to do or be specialised in the field that you're in, and therefore there you're so well placed to teach other people. They're also having a shit ride that all come in on the back of what you've been through. So, then to get this kind of collective going is exactly what we need.
Well, I can see why they're bringing it into fruition.
Yeah,
exciting stuff.
Everything's intention, isn't it? So we've just got to keep the intention focused, that regardless of what you hear on the news and what's going on in the world, you have to keep focusing forward. And lots of these wars and things are there to distract everybody, to bring the vibration down. So I don't watch the news, and I do keep up with what's going on in the world, but I don't allow myself to get emotionally connected to it. So I don't watch the imagery. So if there's imagery on YouTube or whatever else of bad things happen to children in Israel and that kind of stuff, I don't watch it because I don't want my emotional energy to be pulled down, because we're all human, right? So when you see an image of a child that's been blown up or had some traumatic thing happen, we're all going to have empathy to that child, and of course we're all going to connect and feel emotional because we're human. Well, most of us are obviously. So therefore it brings our energy down. So by not looking at the imagery, it doesn't mean you're hiding away and pretend it's not happening, because we know it's happening. But by not actually aligning yourself with it, you're keeping your vibration high. And if we all do that, it changes, it manifests higher vibration, and all these things will stop overnight. But it's just trying to get, and of course that's why the media are pushing the imagery out all of the time, because they're trying to keep everyone's emotional state low vibrating down, because they want you to see this stuff. And they know that if you watch the image of a child that's been blown up in some world war somewhere in whatever country, there's nothing you can do about it. You're not part of it. You're not engaged in it. You can't do anything. But what it does do, it affects you. And that's the key from the media, really.
Yeah. My own soul guides literally had to pull me out of body to tell me that. I wasn't listening, and I was obsessed with 9/11 and with the whole Palestine thing. And I spent all day, every day, basically in a low vibration, a fearful state, because I was so angry and emotional about what was happening and my inability to do anything about it. Yeah. So that completely resonates.
And of course, that's the whole idea. So if you imagine everyone in the world that turns their television set on and sees the imagery that the media push out, some of which probably isn't even right or real, who knows?
Real, it's made up, yeah.
Half of it is proven to be made up, isn't it, and all that kind of stuff. But it does affect everybody. And that's the object of the exercise, of course, because you look at the TV now, you've got like 100 channels of crap, haven't you? You haven't got one positive news channel to watch. So unless you went to Gaia or something that is a little bit more positive in that way, there's not one TV channel that's telling you all the great things that happen in the world every day, which there could be. There could be a positive news channel, but obviously the people that own the media stations and stuff won't do that, because they're trying to keep everyone in this low vibrating negative state.
That really resonates. Somebody just had a question. If they have their children join for the podcast or for the chat with Chen tomorrow, would their children be able to experience healing as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just intention. As long as they're open to do that, that's fine. And that was one of the things that Chen did ask me to make sure I said to everyone. If he hasn't already said it, is that if you don't want to, then you just have to put the thought up that you don't want to, and that's fine. So it is intention based, because there might be.
I can't imagine anyone would be like, "No, I don't want healing. I don't want to do that."
with different people, everyone's got free will, haven't they? So if you didn't want to receive it, then you only have to put the thought, not for me, and that will be respected by Chen and his team.
Wow. Well, Andy, you have answered so many helpful questions today. I am so deeply grateful to you. I know you wanted to keep it to about 90 minutes, and that's exactly how long we've kept it here. So thank you so much for so much of your time. And it really was an extremely insightful conversation.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'll watch it when you post it. Which is the funny thing, of course.
Yeah, if any of you joined halfway through, all you have to do is refresh the page when we end the conversation, and it will be watchable. So you guys can catch up again. And like I said, this was our most popular one yet. 303 people were watching. Andy, thank you very much. It was really something. This collective is getting big. It's growing every day.
Perfect. Well, thank you for hosting it, Laura, because obviously, you need acknowledgement that it's your time, your energy, and you're the one behind the scenes that is making the platform available. Because as I know I said earlier, but these Chen chats I've been doing for a long time, and 13 people compared to like 200 is a bit of a leap forward, really. So you're the reason that that's happening. So you need to take the credit as well, which is nice.
Thank you. I'm just paying it forward. I love these guys very much. They all know I love them, and I would do basically anything I can to help them. And I think that is what's resonating. They know it. So it makes me feel good to help other people, and I like to pay it forward. So I'm glad I signed up for this in this lifetime and in the in between.
Perfect.
Everything happens as it's supposed to. So yeah, I will see you tomorrow, Andy. Many of us will be joining you tomorrow at 1 o'clock, or I should say EST, 6 p.m. in UK. If you guys haven't signed up already, be sure that you do. You don't want to miss it.
Perfect. Awesome. Good. I'll be looking forward to it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, because obviously I don't know myself, which is an odd place to be quite often, when you never know what you're actually doing and what you're going to say, or when Chen comes in, I never know what he's going to talk about. So I just have to sort of work on the assumption that it will be good and positive, and then listen to it afterwards.
Yep. Well, that's what keeps it interesting. Honestly, he's keeping you on your toes.
He does that, to be fair.
Yeah. I like how he calls you Young Andrew as well.
I know, we always call people by their name, like their proper name generally, because of course I tend to prefer going by Andy, but he's never ever called me Andy because my birth name was Andrew, and that's what he always refers to me as. And even when I've said to him, "Can we change this and you can call me Andy?" he just says no. So because again, this is about your vibration. You chose was Andrew, and therefore that's the real name that you chose before you came in, and that's what I'm going to call you, basically. So these are the arguments that we have behind the scenes, basically, that no one gets to see.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you so much. I will see you guys. I'm going to be on an hour early tomorrow, so that way I can still squeeze in my podcast before my astral projection class. And then as soon as the astral projection class ends, I will be joining them for their event. So tomorrow's going to be a very busy day. I'll probably be spending about 6-7 hours with some of you if you're coming to all the events. So I love you guys. I will see you tomorrow. And thank you again, Andy. We'll see you tomorrow as well.
Thanks, folks. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.